Hi class, I'm not here today, so Miss Craft is here, but I wanted to give you a little bit of instruction. So the first thing you're going to want to do is get out your notebook if you don't have it yet, and you are going to flip back to what we did in the narrative revision, and you're going to find this page that looks like this. Here we go. And on this page, you remember that we talked about the writing process. We talked about how you have to bake your cake here before you frost it or decorate it down here. So we're going to work on first our global revision, which means kind of the big picture revision, and then we're going to work on local revision, which is kind of the smaller pieces of our writing. So I'm going to take you through this. One of the things that I did add, and I want you to add to your notes, is number 5, grammar and formatting. That's going to be last, and we're not going to talk about that today. That's going to be on Tuesday when I see you guys. So with our revision, I want you to take step by step through this. So the first thing we're going to do is look at ideas and content. So I'm going to make this big for you. Here we go. So ideas and content, make sure you're taking this information down. You want to writing this down in your notebook. So first you want to connect with your ideas and content. You want to have the reader walk away after they read your topic saying, so what? Now what should I do? Do you want them to think differently about your topic? Do you want them to consider a new perspective? Do you want them to take action? You can see in the Serena Williams story that we did, she definitely had a call to action. She wanted us to do something. But with the video games and disabilities, I think the author more just wanted us to think about video games in a new way, and that's perfectly acceptable. So as your reader is reading, you want to come down with one main idea, the so what. And this is going to connect right to your thesis. Your thesis is really your so what. In narrative or in creative writing, oftentimes this is called a theme, and we talked about it before, but for this one it's going to be your thesis, which is your main idea of your essay. So this is probably going to be in your conclusion. You're going to want to make sure that this is really clear, that your writer knows, or that your reader knows what you're trying to say. And all of this is going to be together in the ideas and content. Then after you have that, you are going to check your evidence. So what happens sometimes in writing, and what happens in my writing, is that we start with this one idea, and then we think about it in one way. But as we start writing, as we start researching, our ideas kind of change, and we have new ideas that come to be. And so what I noticed in my writing, and I'm going to pull it up here for you, my brainstorm, as I was writing in the research, some of the things kind of went off topic, and some of the research was surprising, and so I had to respond to it. So I kind of changed what I thought I was going to talk about originally, and that's okay. My thinking kind of changed as I wrote. But now that I did that, I need to check my evidence. I need to go through my draft and see, does this now fit now that I know I'm talking about this topic, or do I need to cut it? So I'm going to look at both my research and my anecdotes and my thinking. I should probably add that here. So I'm going to cut out what doesn't fit, even if it's good writing. And I know that's really hard for some students, but you want to cut out what doesn't fit. And then once you have that, you might see that there's some holes in your writing. You want to add new writing to make it all cohesive. So you can see in my brainstorm here that I linked for you guys, it's kind of all choppy and everything is there for you. But then when I turned it into my draft, you can see I did a lot of that. I tweaked it. I took some things out. I cut out some like blurbs. I put in a transition. We'll talk about that. And then I made my writing hopefully stronger as I went into everything. So you're going to have some time to work on this part. So you're going to pause it here. You're going to work for a little bit, and then Miss Craft is going to give you the next directions in just a second. So here, you've finished working on your ideas and content. And now we're going to move on to the second part. Oh no, it went sideways. I'll have Miss Craft put this on the overhead. We'll just go like this. There you go. Organization. So your organization is going to be really important. First thing you want to do is maybe go back to those mentor texts. Go back to the Serena Williams and the video game story and see how they set it up, because they do it differently. Serena Williams starts with her anecdote and then transitions to her research and then transitions to her conclusion. She has very clear block structure. In the video games essay, it's not as true. They kind of start with this little anecdote, go into research, go into some definitions, go into another story about another person, talk about more research. So it's fluid, kind of going back and forth. He's really weaving those two things together. And then finally, he does come to a conclusion that makes our thinking kind of change about video games. Either way is okay. I found the Serena Williams structure to be easier, and so that's how I modeled my writing. But some of you guys are really strong writers, and you might want to challenge yourself to do the second one. Either way, you have to have a very clear organizational structure so that your reader knows where you're going with it. Another part of organization are transitions. This is my bridge. I know I didn't draw so well, but transitions bridge ideas between each other. So you have transition words that we use for our narrative, and I'll also linked transition words for you here that you can use. You also want to make sure you transition ideas. So in a paragraph 3, if you're referencing back to what happened in paragraph 1, you want to say, as stated earlier, right? Reference back to those ideas and remind your reader of what you had said. You also may notice in the Serena Williams text, and if you have it, you're going to want to look at it, that she uses questions to transition. And that's what I did in my text too. I found it really easy to use, like question what's happening and then go into the research. You can also use some of these phrases down here. You can say, you know, this is my story. I was swinging on the swings and this happened. I broke my arm. And you can say, but I'm not the only one, right? 500 children, blah, 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 blah. Or you can say, I'm not alone. There are 100 playground injuries, blah, 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 blah. Or you can say, this isn't uncommon. In fact, blah, 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 blah says that this many children get hurt this way. So these are phrases to help you kind of transition those ideas into the next part of the text. So that's what you're going to do right now. You will have some time to work, and then we will come back and do the next part. Okay, next part. This is technique and style. So for technique and style, oh, my boxes didn't come up here. I'll make sure Ms. Kraft puts it on the overhead. You want to use the narrative. It's because this was green, right? Our narrative pictures are green, and Ms. Kraft still hold it up. And then our information boxes are yellow, and I wrote it in yellow, so I didn't copy well. You want to use all of those techniques in your writing. That anecdote is a narrative inside of informative text. You want to use dialogue. You want to use inner thinking. You want to use character development. You want to use strong, vivid verbs and showing and not telling. Use all those techniques we've been studying as another chance to show me that you can write narratively. In addition to that, the rest of your writing does have informational aspects to it. I know you're going to be using research because that's one of the requirements, but you need to define terms. Maybe you want to address you directly. Maybe you want to try humor. I want you to try to incorporate some of these techniques that we've seen both in the mentor text and we've seen in our narrative technique boxes into your writing. I also want you to look at things that we discussed in narrative. Look at your syntax, your sentence length, and your sentence structure. Can you use that for impact and effect? And then your voice, of course. What kind of tone are you bringing, right? Are we being inclusive in our tone? Are we wanting to kind of include the reader in what we are saying? Serena Williams uses we in order to kind of build that rapport between the audience and the writer. And so that's something you want to think about. So that is going to be the last part of the revision that we do today. All of these are going to help you get a stronger draft. You only need one of your drafts. And as Ms. Kraft will remind you, you will need 4 copies of that for next class because we are going to do a workshop. So I just want to show you where things are here. If you go home, you will have my examples, my brainstorm, and my draft, and I will put the transition notes there for you as well. And my revision notes that we just went over are right there. Make sure that you are working. I hope you were productive today, and I will see you next week.